Joining us is the former energy minister and should I say, principal energy consultant. He's known throughout the region and internationally as well. Let me say a pleasant good evening and welcome him to the Observer, Mr. Kevin Ramnarine. Pleasant good evening, sir.
Hi, good night, Mikey. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
All right, okay, great great to be here, man.
Great to have you on.
I see you also have some other distinguished guests tonight.
Yes, indeed. But you're at the top of the list.
Okay, oh, very good.
Great.
Excellent.
A lot has been said, and I mean, a lot have been disputed as far as some of the comments you have made. Calling, of course, you says there's no evidence to suggest that this country's energy sector is any better off today than it was 9 years ago. And of course, that didn't go down well with the administration, who was basically saying that they simply resuscitated, revitalized, and saved the energy sector, including the restructuring of Petrotrin. Please tell us your comments.
Well, interestingly, that headline was carried on April 1st, 2024. And it was, to be quite honest, when I saw it on my WhatsApp feed on the morning of Easter Monday, which was April Fool's Day, I thought it was a prank. I really thought it was a prank. So I say, somebody go and doctor the Express headline boy, right? But then I realized it was the real thing, that the Prime Minister had really said these things. And I don't know how much time we have tonight, but we could talk until tomorrow morning, but we wouldn't do that. What I would say is that this issue is going to become a major campaign issue in 2025. And we have to be able to forecast and to anticipate what the PLM is going to campaign about. Because election campaigns are exercises in marketing. It's about selling your wares, selling your goods, And after 9 years, the PLM doesn't have much to sell. So they are going to come to the population in 2025 and they're going to talk about how they save the energy sector. And of course, if you don't know better, you may be inclined to believe them. If nobody challenges that, then you might be inclined to believe them. It comes as, if you know the history of Eastern Europe under communism, the people in Eastern Europe were told that they were living a better life than the people in Western Europe. And as time passed and people in Eastern Europe began to learn the truth, that the people in Western Europe were living much better than them, then they realized they were being lied to for decades from their government. So if we don't dispel these things, of course, people have no other avenue to discern what is true and what is false. And what are the facts? The facts are everybody knows that the energy sector went into a precipitous decline after 2015. All the figures bear this out. Drilling has fallen by 58%. Gas production has fallen by 32%. Oil production by 31%. We've had significant declines in foreign exchange in our foreign reserves. And of course, the main contributor to our foreign reserves is oil, gas, ammonia, methanol, LNG. So our foreign reserves have fallen. When we left office in September 2015, the foreign reserves were around 11 billion US dollars. They're now 5.6 billion US dollars. And if we have this conversation again in 12 months, they are not going to be 5.6 billion. They might be 4.6 billion. The foreign reserves, the fall in the foreign reserves is because the energy sector is not performing as it used to, because production of gas has come down, production of LNG, I think, is down by about 40%, production of ammonia and methanol down, and everything, all the graphs, I think I have about 7 or 8 graphs, drilling, gas production, oil production, all the metrics show, well, the most frightening graph is persons with jobs. in the petroleum sector. This is CSO data. This is not Kevin Ramnarine data. This is not UNC data. This is CSO data. When we left office, there were 22,500 people working in the oil and gas industry. By the end of 2022, that had come down to about 10,000. And the question is, where did people go on?
Yeah, but Mr. Amra, let me interject here. And you're hitting some...
So that is why, sorry, Mikey, to round off what I'm saying. That is why when the Prime Minister comes and says that he has revived and resuscitated the energy sector, those things have to be challenged.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is this. I mean, yeah, we can challenge it as much as we can. People talk a lot about these economic indicators, but for the man on the ground who may not be inclined to understand exactly as far as the drilling and as far as what's going on in the sector, the indicators that he or she has is the fact that their lives have changed, and it hasn't changed for better. Now someone is telling us, listen, forget what Mr. Ramnarine is saying. He's all wrong as far as drilling, as far as the capacity of what we have there in reserves and what have you. And forget about that. And moving forward, this is all the things that we're going to put together, and we're going to peg it to this in order for us to provide better education, better healthcare, better all of this. And these promises are going to be made, of course. I think you said that at the beginning. It's going to be made. But what is the real reality? In one instance, you're saying that Trinidad and Tobago, hold on, has lost a number of plants at Point Lisas, along with Train 1. While the other 3 operational trains were limping at just over 60% utilization. I mean, what is the real state of what we're in?
Well, I think you may be reading from the Sunshine. I don't know if you're always reading from some other document, but I had given those comments to the Sunshine, and it was published yesterday, front page story in the Sunshine. Yeah. The issue, so you come to this issue of what does this mean for the man on the ground? What does it mean for the man in the red band maxi? And distinguished counsel Jayanti Lakshmidiyal is going to follow us, and she would know the legal reference to the term the Clapham omnibus, right? Well, in Trinidad we call it the red band maxi. So in England they talk about the man in the Clapham omnibus as a sort of analogy for the average man in England. In Trinidad, I call it the man in the red band maxi. So what does it mean for the man in the red band maxi? Well, a few days ago, the Guardian ran a front page story about suicide. I don't know if you saw that story, Mikey.
Yes, yeah.
Why has suicide rates in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly among men, increased? And this is what the story said. And again, this is not my data.
Right.
This is not Kamla Prasad Bisesa data or Dudnat Meru data. This is data that the Guardian produced, and I would assume the Guardian got this from the government and government agencies and CSO and so on. Suicide rates are up, and I think it has a lot to do with the economic condition of the country, the absence of opportunity, people not being able to get jobs. When men, and I speak from the perspective of a man, when a man cannot get an economic livelihood, when a man cannot provide for his family, his wife, his mother, his children, it has a tremendously debilitating impact on a man. Right? I'm speaking here, I hope it's resonating with people who are listening. Yeah. So the economy shrunk from the peak GDP of the country, and GDP is simply a measure of the wealth of the country. So the richest the country had ever been was 2015, under my former boss, Kamla Prasad Bisesa. And then the PNM came in, and the economy shrunk by about 20% from 2015 to 2021. And yes, there was COVID in between there, but COVID is only part of the story, right? The economy started to show some growth in 2022 and 2023, and of course, Mr. Imbert celebrates. But I always say, if you fall from the 20th floor in the Hyatt Regency Hotel and you hit the ground and you get up and you climb up to the second floor, that is not recovery. And that is what the government is celebrating, right? So we lost the amount of GDP we lost between 2015 and 2021 was equivalent to the size of the Barbadian economy. I went and I checked this. So that had a knock-on impact. You look at some of the malls in this country. You go to Trinity Mall. You go to Gulf City Mall. Gulf City Mall is not the mall I remember as a teenager. Trinity Mall, lots of empty storefronts and so on, right? You look at the contracting community between the Point Lisas industrial estate and going all the way down to Marabella. That is an industrial belt along the southern main road here. A lot of those contractors have been decimated, right? You look at Gayelle. Gayelle is, I use the term ghost town during the post-budget analysis last year, and that is what it is. The only thing Gayelle missing right now is tumbleweed, right? And all that would have had Mayaro, and I know I have friends from that area who listen to me. Mayaro Rio Claro has one of the highest, or if not the highest, unemployment rate in the country. And that is where the energy sector is the heart of that region of the country, right? There's a high unemployment rate in County St. Patrick. And what is in County St. Patrick? The energy sector, Atlantic LNG, right? So you ask what it means to the man on the street. So let's come to the foreign exchange. Because I was very moved to read an article by one of my friends from not a former friend, a friend who I went to university with, Dr. Radhika Mais, where she talks about having to go to conferences abroad to present her papers and so on, and going to the bank and asking for money to travel and getting 300 and 200 US. And that is the story for everybody. If you, Mikey, you want to go Miami tomorrow, you go to the bank, you get 300 US. You might know somebody in another bank, and they might give you 200 US. And you're scraping up US everywhere. We have a problem with foreign exchange in the country, and that is directly related to the health of the energy sector. The government, the banks, the commercial banks, get foreign exchange from two sources in the main. One, they get foreign exchange from when the central bank sells them foreign exchange, and they get foreign exchange when people sell foreign exchange to them. Now, who sells foreign exchange to the banks in that quantity? Not me, and not you. Who could have the capacity to sell millions and hundreds of millions of US dollars to the bank? It has to be energy companies who are converting US dollars to TT dollars to run their companies in Trinidad. So BP, Shell, Nutrien, Atlantic LNG, NGC, they all sell US dollars to the banks, and the banks give them TT dollars, and that's another way the bank gets US dollars.
Right.
So when that sector is not healthy, you have this flow of US dollars into the commercial banks falling. And as a result, the central bank has to intervene a lot more and dip into our gas tank, which is our foreign reserves, to prop up the exchange rate. And that is why our foreign reserves have fallen by about 50% in the last 8 or 9 years. And if we have this conversation on the eve of the election, assuming the election is next year, we don't know, it might be this year, those foreign reserves will be under 5 billion. I monitor them every month, right? We are now at a 17-year low with foreign reserves. We are at a 20-year low with natural gas production, and oil production is back to 1939. I said, what happened in 1939? World War II started.
Yeah, the Great Depression.
So that is the kind of back in the times, moonwalking governance that we have going on here. The country is everything is moving backwards, except the crime rate. So I could put up a graph of oil production, gas production, drilling, foreign reserves. All these things will be trending south. And the one graph that I could put up for you that trending north is the graph with the murders.
Yeah.
So this is the conundrum in which we find ourselves. An economy which is in contraction, right? Mr. Embert will disagree. He will say that we've had 2 years of growth, but I explained the analogy of the Hyatt. And then we have the murder rate and the crime rate and the home invasions. So in all that, Minister Young chooses to go back in time, he goes into his time machine and he turns the dial to 2015 and he goes back in time like, he's in a Jules Verne novel, right? The time machine, and the time machine has gone back into 2015 and installed there. And when I was Minister of Energy from 2011 to 2015, I could not conceive in 2011 I would be in Parliament talking about what the PNM did in 2002, or what the PNM did in 2003. No, because I was looking forward. I was looking forward at the development of the deep water, at the development of getting more companies to invest in our acreage, building the Mitsubishi plant, getting the Mitsubishi plant approved in Labrie, which is a plant they continue to criticize. Interestingly, it's in a PNM constituency, right? Labrie. But when you drive a vehicle by constantly looking in the rearview mirror, you probably, you're going to crash.
And you're right.
And that's exactly what happened.
No, you're right. But let me ask you this. Let's touch on Petrotrin. Was it a business model that was complex? I mean, what exactly took place? I know that later on,
Petrotrin was a very complex commercial creature to understand because of how it evolved and how it was created. It was an amalgam of different companies that were brought together in 1993 by Mr. Manning. And it was what you call an integrated oil company, in that it explored for oil, it produced oil, and it sold its own oil to its own refinery, which then produced the petroleum products like gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and so on, and sold those things to Trinidad and Tobago and to other countries. So that was a full chain from Petrotrin operated from under the earth straight into your gas tank, right? Or straight into the plane. So it was an integrated company, and the company was carrying a lot of debt when we came into government, because why the company was burdened with debt, because there were all these bonds that Petrotrin issued, and those bonds were issued for some of them for the World GTL project, some of them for what is called the gasoline optimization program, which we completed, and so on. And the interesting thing is that we completed the gasoline optimization program in 2014. Now, when we completed the gasoline optimization program, we started up new plants. Now, I want people to listen to me very carefully. When you start a new plant and the plant becomes operational, the following year you have to cater for depreciation of that plant, because you've turned the key on the plant and started the plant. It is similar to driving a new car out of the garage. If you drive a new car out of Ansamakal on Richmond Street, the salesman will show you the line on the ground, and they call it the depreciation line.
Right.
As the car rolls out the showroom, the vehicle depreciates. So
right.
All those new plants started to record depreciation in 2015, and that showed up as a depreciation expense. And that is what showed up on the Petrotrin books in 2015. At the same time, Petrotrin was carrying a lot of inventory of crude oil and gasoline and diesel and so on. And between 2014 and 2015 and 2016, the price of oil was falling. So the value of the inventory was falling. And that too was reflected on the profit and loss statement. And again, it would have appeared, those things made Petrotrin appear to be loss-making, right? So I think the government and all the people who were all these committees didn't really get that, right? Shortly after the refinery was closed down in 2018, the world refining sector went through the most golden age ever. And refineries around the world were minting money, right? The refining sector, especially after COVID, had a significant rebound around the world. So for the Prime Minister to come and see that Petrotrin would have lost $5 billion or something like that. I don't know if he was quoting US or TT. I don't know where he gets that from. I don't know how he's calculated that. But even if it was based on an assessment that happened in 2018, the world is not a static place, right? And as I just pointed out, right after the refinery was closed down, the global refining sector went through an unprecedented golden age where refiners in the United States and throughout Latin America and so on were making money hand over fist. So it was a decision which I believe, I don't know who advised the government to make that decision.
Yeah, but today, Mr. Ramnarine, I don't mean to cut you. Today, we're hearing that Heritage Petroleum is producing. It's on track.
Well, I'll tell you about that. So Petrotrin, as I said, was an integrated oil company. Right. Meaning that they had an upstream element, which is now Heritage Petroleum. They had a refining element, which is the Point-of-Care refinery, and then they had the marketing side of it, which is Barrier. So what the government did was to break it up into Heritage, which is upstream. Right. Guaracara Refining, which is the refinery, which I think might be dead, and then Barrier, which is the marketing. So the government took the company and broke it up into 3 different companies. You're following me so far?
Yeah.
But when we were the integrated company, Petrotrin, the upstream part of Petrotrin, which is now Heritage, was always profitable. Always profitable. I inquired from one of the former VPs of finance of Petrotrin, and I was told that probably it was only 1 year in the history of the company, the upstream side of the company lost money. So to come and say that Heritage Petroleum is a success story, the first thing is this. Heritage Petroleum inherited an operating oil company. They inherited operating wells, producing wells, pipelines, valve stations, gathering tanks and all these things, right? So they didn't create anything. They inherited a company that was built by generations of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And the production of Heritage Petroleum, I could tell you, is nowhere close to what Petrotrin was producing in 2018. So I really don't, I think it's again hyperbolic to say that Heritage is this great success and so on. The government, so coming now to the refinery, so we now import. Now, we have a lot of global crises going around the world. There is, of course, the ones we know, Ukraine and Russia, Israel and Gaza. You know, there's been a major earthquake today in Taiwan, right? And Taiwan has always had tensions with China, and there's always a threat of nuclear war in the world right now. So in that kind of environment, countries like Trinidad and Tobago need to guarantee themselves food security and energy security. If there was to be a global war, I think we'd be cut off from fuel supplies because everybody will want to keep their fuel for themselves.
All right.
Right? So that is where a refinery becomes very important. There's a non-cash value of a refinery, which is energy security. Could we restart the refinery? Because it's a question I get all the time. And the answer is yes, we could restart the refinery, but we would have to find $1.2 billion to restart the refinery. And I think we would have to find some partners to help us with that
as well.
You know, it cannot be the government of Trinidad and Tobago alone carrying that burden. But I did a costing of what it would cost to restart the refinery, and with some friends, and we came up with $1.2 billion.
Wow.
Right? The biggest part of that $1.2 billion is purchasing crude oil inventory to last 3 months, because you don't restart a refinery with a barrel of oil.
Yeah.
With 1 barrel of oil, you have to restart a refinery with enough inventory to have to run through the whole refinery on a continuous basis now, right?
Right.
So, but the thing is, the closure of the refinery has had so many effects and impacts. I think it has impacted the entire San Fernando, Marabella, Vista Bella, Gasparilla, Claxon Bay, train line, all those areas have been impacted, right? And then there are a lot of contractors in Trinidad, Mikee, who had all their business with the refinery. There were some companies where 80% of their revenue was the refinery. There are some companies that had 100% of it. There's one company I'm aware of where all their business was in the refinery.
That's what the refinery.
They had to, luckily, they had to pivot very quickly, and they got working point leases, right?
And that's something I want to look at as far as part 2 of this interview with you next week. Some of the new players, because there are players who came from the food franchise and are now part of this entire thing. I want to look at that.
I just want to say one more thing, Mikey.
Go ahead.
There were companies in Trinidad, and this again is the short-sightedness of that decision. There are companies in Trinidad who were carrying spares for the refinery. When the refinery closed down, what they would do? They have to go and, they have all these things on their hand now that a lot of them would have to write it off or sell it as scrap metal or try to sell it to some other refinery or something like that, right? But there were some companies that were not as dependent on the refinery and were diversified, and they survived. But those companies where a lot of the income was Petrotrin or the refinery and Petrotrin, and that's why we've had this fall in employment from 22,500 to 9,800, which I would love for Stuart Young to explain that to me.
Yeah, you're right, because out of these contractors and these companies, a lot of people are on the breadline. You're so correct, and that's something
because I put that data up on our chat group, and people were astounded as nobody has explained what happened to cause that decline of, I think, 56% in persons with jobs in the petroleum sector. So I don't know. I know you have other people in the batting lineup tonight.
Yeah.
So.
But I want to continue with this because questions are coming in, so I want to continue if possible next week.
Yeah, I am always
Thank you so much.
Available. So,
appreciate that.
If you want to do part 2 next week, that's fine.
Thank you so much.
All right.
It's been a pleasure,
right.
And again, this means a lot. This means a lot, Mr. Ramnarine, because here it is that we're being sold dreams, but the reality of it is that this sector is really in trouble, really, really in trouble. And I want to thank you for shedding some light on that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you.
All the best.